I've been working at a mid-sized tech consulting firm for about 6 years now. Started as a junior analyst fresh out of college, worked my way up to senior analyst, and had been gunning for the team lead position that everyone knew was opening up. I'm talking about a $25,000 raise and finally getting the respect I deserved. For context, my performance had been stellar. I'm not trying to brag here, but the numbers don't lie. Led 3 major client implementations that came in under budget and ahead of schedule. Consistently rated exceeds expectations or outstanding on every single performance review. Mentored 8 junior employees, with 6 of them getting promoted under my guidance. Clients specifically requested me by name for their projects. I was basically doing the team lead job already, just without the title or pay. My boss, let's call him Derek, had always seemed supportive. He'd praise my work in meetings, tell clients how valuable I was, and even hinted multiple times that I was next in line for leadership opportunities. I genuinely thought we had a good working relationship. In March 2022, our team lead announced she was leaving for another company. The position officially opened up in April, and I immediately threw my hat in the ring. This wasn't some pipe dream. I had been preparing for this role for 2 years, taking on additional responsibilities, leading cross-functional projects, even getting my PMP certification on my own dime. The job posting might as well have been written about me. For plus years experience, I had 6. Proven track record of client management, check. Experience leading teams of 5+ people. I'd led teams of up to 12. Strong technical and communication skills. My performance reviews spoke for themselves. I was so confident that I even started looking at apartments in a nicer part of town. Yeah, I know, never count your chickens before they hatch. But honestly, who else could it be? The interview and first red flag. The interview process was weird. Derek interviewed me along with HR and the department VP. The HR person and VP asked great questions about my leadership philosophy, my vision for the team, specific scenarios about handling difficult clients. I nailed every single one. But Derek asked me bizarre questions like, how do you handle stress? And do you think you're ready for this level of responsibility? These were questions you'd ask someone interviewing for their first job, not someone who'd been crushing it for years. Still, I thought the interview went well overall. The VP even said, your experience speaks for itself, and nodded approvingly when I outlined my 90-day plan. 2 weeks later, Derek called me into his office. Look, you're a great analyst, but we've decided to go with someone who has more leadership presence. You're just not ready for this level of responsibility yet. I was stunned. What do you mean by leadership presence? I've been leading projects for 3 years. It's hard to explain. It's just a feeling. Maybe next time. Next time? Asked who got the position, and Derek told me it was someone named Marcus Chun. I'd never heard of Marcus Chun. Turns out Marcus Chun was a senior analyst from our sister company who had been there for exactly 18 months. 18 months. I looked him up on LinkedIn, and his background was decent but nothing spectacular. No leadership experience, no client-facing roles, no major projects under his belt. But here's the kicker. I saw a photo of him on Derek's Facebook page from a company golf outing. They were buddies. Derek had never invited me to any golf outings, despite me mentioning multiple times that I played. The pieces started clicking together. Derek had made his decision before the interview process even started. I was angry, but I'm not stupid. I knew that marching into HR screaming about unfairness would get me nowhere without evidence. So I decided to build a case. First, I went through every email I'd ever sent or received from Derek over the past 3 years. Thank God for unlimited email storage, right? I organized them into folders. Praise and positive feedback. Project assignments and responsibilities. Performance discussions. Anything related to my leadership role. What I found was fascinating and infuriating. In emails to me, Derek was full of praise. Outstanding work on the Morrison account. The client specifically complimented your leadership. You're really stepping up as a leader. But I needed to see what he was telling other people. Here's where I got creative. Our company has a pretty transparent culture, and most internal communications are accessible if you know where to look. I started gathering information from multiple sources. Performance reviews. I requested copies of all my performance reviews from HR, totally within my rights. Every single one mentioned my leadership potential and readiness for advancement. Project reports. I compiled every project report I'd been mentioned in. In reports to clients, Derek consistently highlighted my leadership and management of complex initiatives. Meeting minutes. I went through shared drives and found meeting minutes where Derek had praised my work to other managers and executives. 360 reviews. I reached out to colleagues I'd worked with and asked for written statements about my leadership and contributions. This was presented as gathering feedback for professional development, which wasn't technically a lie. After 6 weeks of digging, a clear pattern emerged. Derek had been systematically undermining me in official channels while praising me to my face. For example, in a client report, he wrote that I contributed to the successful Morrison implementation when I had actually led the entire project. In a performance calibration meeting, I found the minutes. He rated my leadership potential as developing, while rating Marcus Chun, who hadn't even started yet, as strong potential. In budget planning documents, he consistently allocated fewer resources to my projects while giving Marcus's projects, once he started, premium support. The most damning piece of evidence was an email thread between Derek and the VP about the team lead position. Derek had written, "I think we need someone with fresh perspectives and stronger executive presence. OP is solid but might be better suited for a senior IC role long-term." Fresh perspectives? The guy literally hired his golf buddy who had no experience with our clients or processes. I wasn't the only one who noticed the favoritism. I discreetly reached out to other colleagues, and several of them had their own stories. Sarah in marketing had been passed over for a promotion that went to Derek's former colleague from his previous company. Kevin in operations had been managing the vendor relationships for 2 years, but Derek brought in an external hire to take over as vendor relations manager. Lisa in finance mentioned that Derek always seemed to give the high-visibility projects to his guys. I documented all of these conversations with their permission and started to see that this wasn't just about me. Derek had a pattern of favoritism and discrimination. After 3 months of documentation, I had a folder with over 200 pages of evidence. I scheduled a meeting with HR and came prepared. I didn't go in angry or emotional. I presented it like a business case. I'd like to file a formal grievance regarding the team lead promotion process. I believe there were procedural violations and potential discrimination. I have documentation that suggests the decision was made before the interview process was completed and that less qualified candidates were given preference due to personal relationships. The HR director, Janet, looked through my evidence for about an hour. Her expression got more and more serious as she went through the folder. "This is very thorough. We'll need to conduct a formal investigation. Are you prepared for that process?" I told her I was ready for whatever came next. The investigation took 2 months, and it was intense. HR interviewed everyone involved in the promotion process, reviewed all the documentation I provided, and conducted their own audit of Derek's management decisions over the past 2 years. During this time, Derek started acting weird around me. He'd avoid eye contact in meetings, stopped giving me high-profile assignments, and generally seemed nervous. I kept my head down and continued doing excellent work, but I could tell he knew something was up. Marcus, meanwhile, was struggling in the team lead role. 2 clients had complained about his lack of experience, and 1 project had gone significantly over budget under his management. The irony wasn't lost on me. 3 weeks into the investigation, HR found the smoking gun. It turns out Derek had sent an email to his personal account, violation of company policy, discussing the promotion with his wife. In that email, he wrote, "I know OP is probably the most qualified, but Marcus is a good guy, and I think he'd be easier to work with. Plus, OP can be a bit intense. Marcus and I have a good rapport." HR discovered this during their forensic review of Derek's work communications. The fact that he admitted I was most qualified but gave the job to someone else because of rapport was exactly the kind of discrimination our company policies were designed to prevent. In August 2022, Janet called me back to HR. Derek was also there, along with the department VP and the company's legal counsel. After a thorough investigation, we found significant procedural violations in the promotion process for the team lead position. The decision appears to have been made based on personal relationships rather than merit, which violates our promotion and anti-discrimination policies. Derek looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Effective immediately, Derek will be transitioning to a senior consultant role with no direct reports. The team lead position will be reopened, and we'll be conducting a new, properly managed selection process. But wait, there's more. Additionally, based on the evidence presented and our internal review, we're offering you the team lead position immediately, along with back pay to account for the 4 months you should have been in this role. Derek was essentially demoted, and I got the promotion plus $8,333 in back pay, $25,000 raise divided by 12 months, times 4 months. The transition was awkward, to put it mildly. Derek was moved to a different floor, and now works on lower-profile projects. He has no management responsibilities and reports to someone who used to be his peer. Marcus actually handled it pretty well. He admitted privately that he was in over his head and was relieved to go back to a senior analyst role. No hard feelings there. It wasn't his fault that Derek made a bad decision. My new role has been everything I hoped for, and more. The team respects my leadership, clients are happy with our performance, and I've gotten 2 additional team members approved for my budget. Derek and I barely interact anymore. When we do cross paths, he can't make eye contact. He went from confident and chatty to skulking around the office like a kicked dog. I almost feel bad for him. Almost. This whole experience taught me some valuable lessons. Document everything. If I hadn't kept meticulous records, this would have been my word against his. And guess who would have won? Know your company's policies. Our employee handbook clearly outlined the promotion process and anti-discrimination policies. Derek violated several of them. Be professional throughout. I never lost my temper, never badmouthed Derek to colleagues, and continue to do excellent work even when I was furious. Pattern recognition matters. This wasn't just about my promotion. Derek had a history of favoritism that HR needed to address. Sometimes the system works. I was prepared for HR to brush me off or for this to hurt my career. Instead, they took it seriously and did the right thing. 6 months later, I got promoted again to senior manager, overseeing multiple teams. Derek is still in his diminished role, and word around the office is that he's looking for jobs elsewhere, but not having much luck. Turns out, having reassigned due to management violations in your employment history doesn't look great to potential employers. My team is crushing our targets. I'm making more money than I ever thought possible, and I've become something of a legend around the office for standing up to unfair treatment. Several other employees have come to me for advice on dealing with workplace issues, and I always tell them the same thing. Document everything. The best part? Last month, the company asked me to help revise their promotion policies to make them more transparent and merit-based. I spent 2 weeks working with HR and legal to create a system that makes it much harder for managers to play favorites. Derek wasn't invited to provide input on the new policies. Look, I'm not going to pretend this was easy. There were days when I wanted to just find another job and move on. The investigation process was stressful, and I was worried it might backfire and hurt my career. But sometimes you have to fight for what's right. Derek thought he could get away with nepotism because most people don't push back. Most people don't want to rock the boat or deal with the hassle of filing complaints. I'm glad I did. Not just because I got the promotion and the money, but because it sent a message that this kind of behavior has consequences. 3 other managers in our company have been counseled on their promotion practices since my case, and the whole culture around advancement has become more transparent. Derek learned that actions have consequences. I learned that standing up for yourself, when you do it the right way with solid evidence, can actually work. And Marcus? He's actually doing great in his analyst role and has thanked me multiple times for helping him get out of a position he wasn't ready for. We work together regularly now, and he's become a strong team member. The moral of the story? Don't let anyone tell you you're not ready when you know you are. But if you're going to fight, fight smart. Document everything, know your rights, and be prepared to play the long game. Sometimes the best revenge is just getting what you deserved in the first place. Edit. A lot of people are asking about the specific documentation I used. I've gotten permission from my company's legal team to share some general examples, so I'll post a follow-up with template documents that others can use. This seems to be a pretty common problem, unfortunately. Edit 2. Yes, Derek is still at the company. No, we don't work together. No, I don't feel bad about it. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Edit 3. For those asking about legal action, the company handled it well internally and made me whole financially, so I didn't see a need to pursue external legal action. Sometimes the system works. Story 2. My friend mooched $800 off me over 2 years. I exposed him in front of everyone, and he had to Venmo a stranger to pay his bill. This happened about 6 months ago, but I'm still getting messages from people asking how I pulled this off. It's petty, it's satisfying, and it completely solved a problem that had been draining my bank account for years. Let me paint you a picture of my friend Jake. We've known each other since college, about 8 years now. Great guy in most ways, funny, loyal, always down for an adventure. But Jake had one massive, infuriating flaw that I didn't fully recognize until I started keeping track. Jake never, ever had money when it mattered. It started innocently enough in college. Hey man, can you spot me for this pizza? I'll get you back. My card got declined. Can you cover my drink? Venmo me your info. I'll send it tonight. Classic broke college student stuff, right? We've all been there. Except Jake never grew out of it. Post-graduation, Jake landed a decent job at a marketing firm. Nothing fancy, but solid middle-class income. Meanwhile, I'm working as a junior accountant, making roughly the same salary. The difference? I actually budget and plan for social activities. Jake apparently just hopes money will materialize. Here's how a typical Jake interaction would go. Group text. Who wants to see the new Marvel movie tonight? Me. I'm in. Jake. Same. What time? We'd meet up, get to the ticket counter, and suddenly Jake would pat his pockets with this confused expression. Oh shit, I think I left my wallet in my other jacket. Can you grab mine? I'll Venmo you right when we get home. Spoiler alert, he never Venmo'd me. This happened constantly. Coffee shops, bars, restaurants, Ubers, concert tickets, you name it. Always the same routine. Jake enthusiastically agrees to plans. Jake forgets his wallet/card gets declined/app isn't working. I reluctantly cover him to avoid awkwardness. Jake promises to pay me back tonight or this weekend. Jake never mentions it again. The amounts were never huge, usually $15 to $30 per incident. But it added up fast, especially since we hung out 2 to 3 times per week. Last December, I was doing my year-end budget review. Accountant habits die hard, and I decided to calculate exactly how much Jake owed me. I went through my credit card statements, Venmo history, and Cash App records. The number was staggering, $847 over 2023 alone. $847. That's almost a month of groceries. A car payment. A nice vacation weekend. All gone because I was too polite to call out my friend's bullshit. I made a list of every incident I could remember. Movie tickets, $180, 12 movies at $15 each. Dinners, $340, roughly $25 to $30 per meal, 12 plus occasions. Drinks, $165, bar tabs he'd disappear before settling. Uber rides, $95 always forgot to pay his share. Concert/event tickets, $67, 2 events where I bought his ticket in advance. And this was just what I could document. The real number was probably over $1,000. After my financial wake-up call, I started paying attention to how Jake interacted with money around other people. Turns out I wasn't his only victim. During a group hangout in January, Jake pulled his usual routine when we went to grab lunch. But this time, instead of automatically covering him, I watched what happened. Jake looked around the table expectantly. When no one immediately offered, he started his performance. This is so embarrassing, but my card got declined. Must be some fraud protection thing. Could someone spot me? I'll get everyone back. Our friend Sarah reluctantly paid for his $18 sandwich. I made a mental note to ask her about it later. That night, I texted Sarah. Has Jake ever actually paid you back for stuff? Her response was immediate. Never. I think he owes me like $200 at this point. I stopped inviting him to things that cost money. I started reaching out to other friends in our group. The responses were depressingly consistent. Mike, dude, probably $150 to $200. I just assume it's gone now. Emma, I keep a running list in my notes app. He's at $89. Chris, I stopped going to dinner with him months ago. Too expensive. Jake had been systematically mooching off our entire friend group. We were all individually absorbing the cost of his social life because none of us wanted to be that person who called him out. The final straw happened in March. Our whole group planned to see a comedy show downtown. Tickets were $35 each, plus dinner beforehand. Jake was super excited about it and insisted we get good seats. I bought his ticket in advance, like an idiot, because the show was selling out. Jake promised to Venmo me before we went. Day of the show, no Venmo. We met for dinner, and when the check came, Jake did his usual wallet patting routine. Guys, I'm so sorry, but my banking app is being weird and won't let me transfer money. Can someone cover me? I'll pay everyone back tomorrow, I promise. Emma ended up covering his $42 dinner. I was already out $35 for his ticket. The comedy show was great, but I spent the whole time doing math in my head. In one evening, Jake had cost our group $77 and acted like he was doing us a favor by gracing us with his presence. That night, he texted the group, "Thanks for an awesome night, everyone. I'll settle up with everyone tomorrow," beaming face with smiling eyes. Tomorrow came and went. No money, no mention of it. I was done. But I didn't want to just confront Jake directly. That would make me look like the bad guy for keeping track of money between friends. I needed a way to make the problem visible to everyone while forcing accountability. That's when I had my eureka moment. What if Jake couldn't rely on the group to bail him out? I started planning the perfect setup. I'd organize a group dinner at a nice restaurant, somewhere expensive enough that nobody would want to cover someone else's bill, but not so expensive that it seemed weird to go there. The key was the separate checks. If everyone had their own bill, Jake couldn't pull his usual disappearing act or rely on group dynamics to pressure someone into covering him. I chose Marcello's, an upscale Italian place downtown. Nice enough to feel special, expensive enough, $25 to $35 entrees, that covering someone else would hurt, and busy enough on weekend nights that they'd be strict about payment. I called ahead and spoke to a manager. "Hi, I'm organizing a dinner for 8 people this Saturday. We'd like separate checks for everyone. No splitting or combining bills. Can you make a note on our reservation?" They confirmed they could accommodate that. Perfect. Then I crafted the group invitation carefully. "Hey, everyone. Let's do a nice dinner this Saturday at Marcello's to celebrate Emma's promotion. I made a reservation for 7 p.m. It's a bit pricey, but the food is amazing. Who's in?" Jake responded within minutes. "Absolutely. Been craving good Italian food." The others gradually confirmed. Perfect turnout. Me, Jake, Sarah, Mike, Emma, Chris, and 2 other friends who'd also been victims of Jake's mooching. Saturday night arrived, and I was genuinely nervous. I'd never orchestrated anything like this before, and part of me wondered if I was being too harsh. But then I remembered the $847 and pushed those feelings aside. We all met at the restaurant right on time, including Jake, who seemed in a great mood. As we were seated, our server introduced herself and mentioned that she'd be providing separate checks for everyone, just as requested. I watched Jake's face carefully when she said this. There was the briefest flicker of concern, but he quickly covered it with a smile. I could see the wheels turning in his head, probably calculating whether he could still work his usual angles. The menu was perfect for my purposes. Everything was legitimately expensive. Appetizers $12 to $18, entrees $28 to $38, drinks $8 to $12 each. Jake studied the prices for a long time before ordering. Throughout dinner, Jake was his usual charming self. He told funny stories, complimented everyone, and generally acted like the life of the party. I almost started to feel bad about what was coming. Almost. When we finished eating, our server began distributing individual checks. Everyone else started pulling out cards or cash without thinking about it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. Jake looked at his check, $47 for an appetizer, entree, and 2 cocktails, and began his familiar routine. He patted his jacket pockets, then his pants pockets, with increasing urgency. "Oh no," he said, loud enough for the table to hear. "I think I left my wallet at home. This is so embarrassing." But here's where my plan was perfect. Usually, Jake would make this announcement while everyone else was still figuring out the split, creating natural chaos where someone would just offer to cover him. With separate checks already distributed, everyone was focused on their own bill. Sarah was calculating her tip. Mike was entering his PIN. Emma was taking a photo of her receipt for expense reporting. Nobody rushed to offer help because they were all busy with their own payments. Jake's eyes darted around the table, waiting for someone to volunteer. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Jake said, a bit louder now. "Could someone maybe spot me? I'll definitely pay everyone back tomorrow." This was the moment of truth. In the past, someone would have already offered by now. But tonight, with everyone holding their own $40 to $50 checks, the group dynamic was completely different. Mike looked up from his card reader. "Dude, I literally just put my card in the machine." Sarah, "Same, mine's already processing." Emma, "I paid cash exact change, sorry." One by one, everyone explained why they couldn't help. Some had legitimately already paid. Others were clearly taking advantage of the situation to avoid being Jake's bank yet again. Jake's charm was rapidly evaporating. The server was waiting patiently, but the restaurant was busy, and she obviously needed to clear the table. "Look," Jake said, his voice taking on a slightly desperate edge. "Someone has to be able to help me out here. This is really embarrassing." Chris, who'd been quiet most of the evening, finally spoke up. "Jake, how much do you think you owe all of us from other dinners?" The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Everyone suddenly found their phones very interesting, but I could tell they were all listening intently. "What do you mean?" Jake asked, but his voice was defensive. "I mean, you forget your wallet a lot, man. And I can't remember the last time you actually paid anyone back." Jake's face went through several emotions: confusion, indignation, then dawning realization that his secret was out. Jake pulled out his phone and started frantically trying to figure out a solution. "My banking app isn't working," he muttered, tapping and swiping. "The mobile payment thing won't connect." The server approached our table. "Excuse me, sir, but we do need to settle your check. It's getting busy, and we need the table." Jake looked around desperately. "Can I just run to an ATM real quick?" "I'm sorry, but we can't hold the table that long on a Saturday night." This was getting genuinely uncomfortable. Part of me felt bad watching Jake squirm, but a bigger part of me was fascinated to see how he'd handle being held accountable for once. Jake's final move was both predictable and pathetic. He turned to a couple at the neighboring table who'd been obviously listening to our drama. "Excuse me," he said to them. "This is super awkward, but could I Venmo you $50 and you pay my bill with your card? I left my wallet at home." The couple exchanged glances. The woman looked sympathetic, but the man shook his head. "Sorry, we don't really know you." Jake tried the table on the other side with the same result. Finally, he approached a solo diner at the bar, a woman in her 30s eating alone while scrolling her phone. "Hi, I know this is weird, but would you be willing to pay my dinner bill if I Venmo you right now? It's $47. I left my wallet at home, and I'm here with friends." The woman looked at Jake, then at our table of 8 people all staring at this interaction, and somehow agreed to help. Maybe she felt sorry for him, or maybe she just wanted the awkwardness to end. Jake frantically sent her $50 via Venmo. She paid his bill, and the ordeal was finally over. The walk to our cars was the most uncomfortable 5 minutes of my adult life. Jake was clearly humiliated and angry. Everyone else was processing what had just happened. "That was fucked up," Jake finally said when we reached the parking garage. "You guys set me up." "Nobody set you up," Sarah replied. "We all just paid our own bills like adults." "You could have warned me you were doing separate checks." "Why would we need to warn you?" Mike asked. "Do you not usually plan to pay for your own dinner?" Jake didn't have a good answer for that. He got in his car and left without saying goodbye to anyone. Within an hour of getting home, our group chat exploded. "Emma, okay, so are we going to talk about what just happened?" "Sarah, I felt bad for him, but also, he's done this to all of us dozens of times. Mike, the fact that he asked random strangers for help instead of just admitting he needed to borrow money from us says everything. Chris, I've been keeping track since last year. He owes me $134. Me, he owes me over $800. Sarah, what? Emma, holy shit, $800? And then everyone started sharing their numbers. The total amount Jake owed our friend group was over $2,000. $2,000. That's not forgetting your wallet money. That's systematically freeloading off your friends. Jake didn't text or call anyone for 3 days. Finally, he sent me a private message. Jake, look, I know you orchestrated that whole thing at dinner. That was really shitty of you. Me, what exactly did I orchestrate? I made a dinner reservation, and everyone paid their own bill. Jake, you know what you did? You made me look like an asshole in front of everyone. Me, I didn't make you do anything. You chose not to bring money to dinner. Jake, I forgot my wallet. It happens. Me, Jake, it happens to you 2 to 3 times per month. For 2 years. You owe me $847. There was a long pause before his response. Jake, I don't owe you $847. That's ridiculous. Friends help each other out. Me, help goes both ways. When's the last time you paid for my meal? Another long pause. Jake, I can't believe you've been keeping track of every dollar like some kind of accountant. Me, I am an accountant. And yes, I keep track when someone owes me almost $1,000. Jake, we're not friends anymore if you're going to be this petty about money. Me, we stopped being friends when you decided I was your personal ATM. He never responded to that message. Jake stopped showing up to group events. At first, I thought maybe I'd gone too far and ruined the group dynamic. But something interesting happened instead. Everyone started having more fun. Without Jake's constant financial drama, we could make plans without worrying about who would get stuck covering the extra bill. People were more relaxed, more willing to try new restaurants or activities. Sarah organized a wine tasting tour, $45 per person. Everyone paid in advance, no issues. Mike planned a weekend camping trip, $80 each for the cabin. Everyone Venmo'd him within 24 hours of the invitation. Emma suggested season tickets to our local baseball team. Everyone calculated the cost and committed or declined based on their actual budget. It was revolutionary. Adult social activities where everyone acted like adults with their own money. About 2 months after the dinner incident, I ran into Jake at a coffee shop near our office. He was with someone I didn't recognize, probably a coworker. I nodded politely and got in line behind them. I couldn't help but overhear their conversation at the register. Barista, that'll be $8.50. Jake, actually, can you make that 2 separate orders? Just the cappuccino for me. Coworker, oh, sure, no problem. Jake pulls out his wallet and pays for his own coffee. He had money. He had his wallet. He was perfectly capable of paying for his own stuff when he couldn't rely on someone else to cover him. The whole forgetting his wallet thing had been a calculated act. Last month, I heard through mutual friends that Jake had started dating someone new. Apparently, on their 3rd date, he pulled his classic forgot my wallet routine at a nice restaurant. According to the story, which came from the woman's roommate who knows Sarah, his date looked him dead in the eye and said, "That's fine. I'll ask them to box up your food and you can eat it when you get home and find your wallet." Then she paid for her own meal and left him at the restaurant. They didn't have a 4th date.